The millionaire's baby spat at the nannies, but kissed this maid. A cold November night wrapped around New York. Raindrops slid down the glass walls of the Hale Empire building, shimmering under the city's neon lights. Inside, everything gleamed with sterile perfection. Marble floors, mirrored elevators, walls of glass. It was beautiful, efficient, and utterly lifeless, much like the man who owned it. On the top floor, Lena Morales, a part-time janitor, was scrubbing the marble tiles in silence. She worked the night shift to pay for her grandmother's medicine in Queens. Her job was simple: clean, stay invisible, and leave. But that night, her world changed with a single sound. A cry tore through the stillness, sharp, desperate, endless. From upstairs came a woman's trembling voice. "Mr. Hale, I can't take it anymore. That boy, he's not normal." Lena froze. A nanny in a white uniform stormed down the staircase, tears mixing with baby drool on her blouse. "He needs a priest, not a nanny," she cried, ripped off her name tag, and ran for the door. Behind her appeared Ethan Hale, tall, dark-haired, elegant, but hollow-eyed and worn. The perfect suit did little to hide the exhaustion that clung to him like a shadow. "Mrs. Peterson, please, just one more night," he pleaded, but she was already gone. He stopped in the middle of the marble hall, shoulders heavy, breath unsteady. Pulling out his phone, his voice cracked. "Patricia, it's me. Nanny number 23 just quit. Double the offer, triple it if you have to. I just need someone who can make him stop crying. Just one night." Lena's hand tightened around the mop. 23 nannies in 6 months. Everyone in New York knew his story. The young CEO who lost his wife, Valentina Hale, in a car accident, leaving behind an 18-month-old son, Noah, the boy no one could calm. Upstairs, the crying grew louder, almost animal. Ethan turned and hurried up the stairs. Lena stood still, her chest aching. She wasn't supposed to interfere, yet something in that man's voice pierced her. "I'm trying, Noah. I really am," he whispered faintly, and she felt a pang of recognition, of helplessness, of love that keeps breaking. Drawn by instinct, she followed. On the next floor, the lights were dim. The smell of milk and disinfectant hung in the air. Through the half-open door, she saw Ethan holding a small boy with golden curls, his shirt rumpled, his arms trembling. The child screamed, his tiny fists pounding against his father's chest. "Noah, please!" Ethan's voice was raw, cracking. Then came a whisper, barely audible. "I miss you, Valentina." Lena's throat tightened. Without thinking, she stepped forward. "Mr. Hale," she said softly. He turned sharply, startled. "Who are you?" "Lena Morales," she replied. "I clean the floors. But, I used to look after kids in my neighborhood. Maybe I can help." For a moment, he simply stared at the cheap uniform, the tired face, the calm, honest eyes. Then, as if grasping the last thread of hope, he nodded. Lena walked closer, voice gentle. "Hey there, Noah. It's okay. I've got you." She took the boy into her arms, rocking him slowly. Within moments, the screaming stopped. Noah sighed, his tiny fingers clutching her shirt, his breathing evened out, and he drifted into sleep. Ethan froze, eyes wide. How did you do that?" Lena smiled faintly. "I just held him. Sometimes children don't need training. They just need someone who means it." Noah's lips brushed her cheek in a sleepy kiss. Ethan's breath caught. Something long dead inside him stirred. It was late. Inside the softly lit nursery, the only sound was Noah's gentle breathing. He slept peacefully, his small chest rising and falling under the dim glow of the lamp. Beside the crib, Lena Morales sat quietly, her hands clasped in her lap, still unable to believe what had happened. One sleepless night, one child's tears, and somehow she had brought calm where chaos used to live. At the doorway, Ethan Hale stood motionless. The lamplight brushed against his face, revealing both exhaustion and a fragile calm. His voice was low, almost a whisper. "Would you stay a little longer, Lena? Just until morning. I don't want to wake him." She nodded. "Of course. I'll stay." Through the night, each time Noah stirred, Lena's hand was there, soft and sure. When dawn came, the rain had stopped, and light spilled through the windows like forgiveness. The house, once haunted by crying, now breathed again. When Lena stepped out, Ethan was still awake at his desk. His tie was gone, his eyes tired but clear. He looked up and smiled faintly. "Thank you," he murmured. "I owe you a peaceful night." Lena lowered her gaze. "It was nothing, Mr. Hale." "No," he said quietly. "You don't understand. Noah hasn't let anyone touch him since Valentina died. You're the first." The name hung in the air, heavy with pain. Silence lingered before Ethan spoke again, voice steadier now. "I want to offer you a position, Noah's caregiver. Live here full-time. Salary, $5,000 a month, all expenses covered." Lena froze. 5,000. The number echoed in her mind, louder than her heartbeat. With that money, she could pay for her grandmother's medicine, fix the broken heater, maybe even sleep without fear of eviction. "I'm not qualified," she stammered. Ethan shook his head. "You don't need to be. 23 qualified people failed. You didn't." She hesitated, torn between fear and need. "My grandmother is ill. I can't leave her alone." He paused, then said softly, "Bring her here. There's space. I don't need perfect. I need real." His words disarmed her completely. No one had ever spoken to her like that, with sincerity instead of superiority. She swallowed hard. "I'll think about it, just for a while." Ethan nodded. For a while is enough. 3 days later, Lena arrived at the Hale mansion. It was grand, almost intimidating, a world carved from marble and silence. Her room was beside Noah's, overlooking a maple garden just beginning to turn red. The sheets smelled of lavender. The air smelled of money. She ran her hand across the polished dresser. Everything was perfect. Too perfect. In the mirror, her reflection looked out of place. A small figure in a plain uniform standing in a world that wasn't hers. That afternoon, Mrs. Collins, the head housekeeper, brought her tea. "Mr. Hale trusts you," she said, her tone polite but cautious. "We've never seen him invite anyone to stay." Lena smiled faintly. "I'll do my best." Not everyone shared that warmth. Some whispered in the kitchen, a maid in the room next to the boss. But Lena ignored it all. She had one focus: Noah. That night she sat by the crib, humming a lullaby in Spanish, the same one her grandmother used to sing. Noah's tiny hand gripped her finger, his breathing steady, and he slept on without a sound. In the hallway, Ethan Hale leaned against the wall, watching through the half-open door. The light from the room cast soft gold over his face. Something stirred in him. A heartbeat, a memory, maybe hope. For the first time in months, the Hale mansion slept in peace. The first days at the Hale mansion passed quietly, yet something had changed. Lena had begun to settle into the rhythm of the vast house, where laughter had long been absent. Now soft giggles echoed again like fragile light filtering through heavy curtains. Ethan Hale, still reserved and often buried in work, found himself pausing at Noah's doorway each evening, just to watch his son sleep peacefully in her arms. The calm he had lost was slowly finding its way back. Late one December night, rain drummed gently against the windows. The house was silent except for the ticking of a clock. Lena had just laid Noah down when she noticed his flushed cheeks. She touched his forehead, burning hot. Fear gripped her for a moment, but instinct quickly took over. She lifted him, pressed a cool towel to his skin, then reached for her phone. "Yes, doctor. He's running a high fever. I'm keeping him cool. Please come as soon as you can." Ethan burst through the door moments later, panic written all over his face. "What happened? What's wrong with him?" His voice cracked as he touched his son's hand, trembling. "It's just a fever, Mr. Hale," Lena said calmly. "I've called the doctor. He'll be here soon." "Just a fever? He's burning up." Ethan's voice shook. He sank into a chair, running both hands through his hair. "I can't lose him too. I can't." Lena saw in his eyes the same terror that had haunted him for months, the fear of losing the last piece of his world. She moved closer, her tone steady and kind. "You won't, but you have to stay calm. He needs that from you." He nodded shakily, breathing hard. Together they wiped Noah's forehead, changed the wet towels, whispered soft words of comfort. When the doctor left after administering medicine, Noah finally began to relax. Still, Ethan wouldn't leave. The rain outside grew heavier, thunder murmuring in the distance. Lena glanced at him. "You can rest now," she said softly. "I'll stay with him." Ethan shook his head. "I said that to Valentina once, the night she died. She said she'd be back in 5 minutes, and then she never came back." His voice broke. "I never got to say I'm sorry." Lena stayed silent, listening as he began to speak, slowly at first, then with the weight of someone who had carried too much for too long. He told her about the argument, the phone call he didn't answer, the guilt that hollowed him out since the accident. "When the police called, I was in a meeting. I thought it could wait, but some things, Lena, never wait." Tears blurred his vision. Lena reached out and placed a gentle hand on his. No words, just presence. He turned to her, meeting her calm, steady gaze. "You know," she said softly, "I've never had much to lose, but I know what it means to live for someone else. My grandmother's sick. Every day I pray she won't be in pain. Poverty doesn't kill you. It's the fear of losing the people you love that does. Maybe that's something rich or poor, we all share." Ethan stared at her, then gave a faint, broken laugh. "You're right. I've lived behind walls of money so long, I forgot there's still goodness out there." Lena smiled gently. "What Noah needs isn't perfection. He just needs love. You don't have to be a perfect father, just one who stays." Ethan turned toward his son, watching the color return to his cheeks. The boy's breathing was steady now. When he looked back at Lena, something inside him shifted. Her messy hair, her tired eyes, her steady hands, all radiated warmth he hadn't felt in so long. Peace. That was what she carried. He didn't leave that night. Lena stayed by the crib, and Ethan sat opposite her. Between them, Noah slept soundly, his tiny hand curled around the blanket. Outside, the storm faded, and the first light of dawn crept through the window, soft, fragile, and full of hope. After the night of Noah's fever, something shifted inside the Hale mansion. No one said it aloud, but everyone felt it. The next morning, Sunlight filtered through the enormous windows, spreading warmth across the once cold marble floors. Lena stood beside the crib, watching Noah sleep. His tiny face looked calm, the fever gone. In the corner, Ethan sat slouched in a chair, asleep at last, a faint smile softening his features. From that day on, something new began to bloom inside the house. Quiet, fragile, but real. The air felt lighter, the silence less heavy. Meals were no longer eaten in oppressive quiet. Noah was the first to change. He started to laugh. At first, just small giggles, then bursts of laughter whenever Lena peeked out from behind a towel and made silly faces. He began to talk, to call Da-Da when Ethan entered the room, and Lena in his sweet, broken voice that melted every heart around. Ethan changed next. He began coming home earlier. Evening meetings he once considered essential were canceled without hesitation. Instead, he spent hours on the floor with Lena and Noah, stacking colorful blocks, teaching his son new words, telling him stories about the sky and the wind. One afternoon, Lena carried Noah past Ethan's office and saw him sitting there, laptop open but eyes distant, watching them through the glass. For the first time in months, he smiled, a small, unguarded smile of a man who had forgotten how. The mansion came alive. The kitchen filled with laughter again, the smell of Chef Rosa's pastries drifting through the halls. Mrs. Collins, once stern and distant, now called Lena our little angel. Even the security guards joked, without her, the kid would have scared us all into quitting. Lena laughed when she heard it, but deep down, the warmth came with fear. She was happy, perhaps too happy. Every night she told herself this was temporary, a borrowed piece she could lose any day. At night, after Noah had fallen asleep, she often sat by the window, looking out at the garden bathed in amber light. The maple trees had shed most of their leaves, leaving only a few red ones clinging stubbornly to the branches. She thought of her grandmother, of their cramped apartment in Queens, of the thin blanket they shared in winter. This world she lived in now, was it real or just a dream she'd wake from? One evening, Ethan appeared at her door, a cup of tea in his hand. He didn't enter right away, just stood there looking at the faint glow from Noah's room. "Is he asleep?" he asked. "Yes," Lena said, smiling softly. "He laughed all afternoon. I've never seen him so happy." Ethan nodded, his voice lower. "Thank you, Lena. You've done what I couldn't." She shook her head, embarrassed. "I didn't do anything special. Noah just needed patience." Ethan sat down by the window. "I used to think this house would stay silent forever. After Valentina died, I buried myself in work, thinking if I stayed busy enough, I wouldn't feel anything. But then you came, and everything changed. Noah, me, even this place." Lena looked out the window instead of at him. The moonlight shimmered on the table between them. She could hear the tremor in his voice when he spoke his wife's name, and she saw it clearly then. The pain he carried, the loneliness that had built his walls. "Sometimes," she said softly, "we don't need to forget. We just need to learn how to live with the pain." Ethan turned toward her. His eyes lingered for a moment, searching hers. She looked away quickly, afraid he might see too much. Between them still stood an invisible line, the space between two worlds. But the silence that filled the room no longer felt cold. Outside, the night deepened. The faint light spilling from Noah's room painted the hallway in gold, like a small flame refusing to die. For Ethan, it was the light of hope. For Lena, it was belonging. However fleeting, however fragile, it was hers, at least for now. Monday morning sunlight filtered through the maple trees, filling the Hale mansion's kitchen with warmth. Lena was making milk for Noah, who sat in his high chair laughing, clapping his tiny hands, babbling nonsense. At the table, Ethan read the morning paper, glancing up every so often with a quiet smile, the kind of contentment he hadn't known in years. "Your son's in a good mood today," Lena said playfully. "Maybe it's the sunshine," Ethan replied, folding the paper, his gaze softening. "Or maybe it's because someone brought it into the house." Lena blushed, pretending not to hear. She handed Noah his bottle and turned away, hiding her smile. Neither of them knew their peace was about to end. A black luxury car pulled up at the gate. A tall woman stepped out, elegant, composed, her blonde hair swept neatly into a bun. Her gray coat brushed against her knees, and her heels clicked sharply across the marble driveway. When Mrs. Collins greeted her, the woman spoke first. "I'm Victoria Cortez, Valentina Hale's sister." The name hit the house like thunder. Ethan froze when he heard it. He walked quickly to the foyer, his pulse racing. The door opened, and his past stepped in. Beautiful, proud, and cold. "Ethan," Victoria said, her voice cool. "It's been a long time." "Victoria," he replied carefully, "I didn't expect you here unannounced." "I don't need an invitation to see my nephew," she said, scanning the room until her eyes landed on Lena, who was holding Noah. That gaze was sharp enough to cut. Victoria took a few steps closer, a smirk curling her lips. "And who might this be? The new maid?" Before Ethan could speak, Lena replied politely. "I'm Lena Morales, Noah's caregiver." "Caregiver?" Victoria repeated, her tone dripping with disdain. "A cleaning girl taking care of Valentina Cortez's son? How extraordinary." Silence blanketed the room. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Victoria, don't you dare insult her." "Insult?" She laughed dryly. "I'm simply concerned for my nephew. Forgive me if I find it strange that an unqualified woman now lives under your roof, so close to your child." Lena said nothing. She held Noah tighter, her throat tightening. Victoria's eyes held something cruel, pity mixed with contempt. It stung deeper than words. Ethan stepped forward, his voice firm. "Noah is safe, and Lena is the reason he can finally sleep through the night. If you don't believe me, look at him. When was the last time you saw him smile like that since Valentina died?" Victoria hesitated. As if on cue, Noah giggled, reaching toward Ethan with his small hands. The innocent sound softened the air for a moment, but Victoria's face quickly hardened again. "I'll be staying a few days," she said coolly. "I want to see for myself how this arrangement works." No one objected. Mrs. Collins escorted her upstairs. Ethan turned to Lena, who stood pale and uneasy. "Don't worry," he said softly. "She's not bad, just protective." Lena nodded, though her heart felt heavy. That afternoon, the air in the mansion grew tense. Victoria's presence lingered like a storm cloud. Everywhere Lena went, she could feel those sharp eyes watching. When she fed Noah, Victoria stood by the door, arms crossed. When she rocked the boy to sleep, the sound of heels echoed behind her like a warning. Ethan noticed. That night, he came to Lena's door. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "Victoria means well, but she's forgotten how to show it." Lena smiled faintly. "I understand. People who've lost too much often forget how to be kind." Ethan looked at her for a long moment, then murmured, "Thank you for staying." Outside, the wind picked up, the first drops of rain tapping against the windows. Inside, the light from Noah's room glowed softly down the hall, a small, steadfast flame against the coming storm. For Ethan, it was hope. For Lena, it was the fragile piece she was desperate to hold on to, for as long as fate would let her. A week after Victoria's arrival, the air in the Hale mansion felt like glass, clear but ready to shatter. Everyone moved quietly, cautiously. Lena carried on as usual, feeding Noah, teaching him new words, taking him out to the garden. But every time she sensed Victoria's gaze from a distance, her chest tightened. One mistake, she thought. Just one, and it could all come crashing down. On Tuesday morning, the sound of engines echoed through the gates. 2 black vehicles from the New York Child Protective Services stopped in front of the mansion. 4 officials stepped out, their badges glinting. Mrs. Collins hurried to find Ethan. Moments later, Ethan Hale appeared from his office, composed but with eyes sharp as steel. "What's going on?" he asked. The woman leading the group opened her folder. "We're with CPS. We received an anonymous report regarding the care of Noah Hale. The report states that his primary caregiver may not hold the required certifications." The room froze. Lena stood still, Noah in her arms. The child blinked up innocently, oblivious to the tension. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Who filed it?" "I'm afraid it was anonymous," the inspector replied. "We're just here to verify." From the staircase, Victoria appeared, her voice sweet and poisonous. "Oh dear, what's all this?" Ethan didn't answer. He just looked at her, suspicion flashing in his eyes. The inspection began. They checked Noah's room, his feeding schedule, his environment. Everything was spotless, perfect, until one question came. "Miss Morales," said one of the officers, "do you hold a child care or infant first aid certification?" Lena hesitated. "No, I've cared for children before, but I don't have formal credentials." The woman nodded, making notes. "Understood. Still, to serve as a full-time caregiver, certification is generally required." The air thickened. Ethan spoke, voice calm but cutting. "She's not a hired professional. She's someone I trust. And if you want proof of her qualification, look at my son." He knelt beside Noah, who was happily stacking colored blocks. Before she came, Noah didn't eat, didn't speak, didn't sleep. He was terrified of light, of sound. Now he laughs, he eats, he calls me Dad. If that's not care, what is? The lead officer paused. "I understand, Mr. Hale, but one observation concerns us. The child appears extremely attached to Miss Morales. When she leaves the room, he becomes distressed. It could indicate early dependency symptoms." Ethan rose to his feet, fury flickering in his voice. "He's not dependent. He's loved. There's a difference. If you've ever lost someone, you'd know the kind of touch that keeps a child from breaking." Silence. Even the inspectors seemed to falter. Lena felt tears prick her eyes. He wasn't just defending her. He was defending what they had built together. After 2 tense hours, the CPS team concluded, "No evidence of neglect or harm. We'll follow up periodically, but for now, the case is closed." When the door finally shut, Ethan exhaled slowly. Anger still burned beneath the surface, but exhaustion dulled it. Lena stepped closer. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." He turned to her, his voice low. "You didn't cause anything. You saved us." From the hall, Victoria emerged, a faint smile curling her lips. "Well, I'm glad everything's fine. I only wanted to make sure my nephew was safe." Ethan's expression hardened. "You sent that report, didn't you?" She tilted her head slightly. "I did what any responsible aunt would." The air turned cold. Lena clutched Noah closer and quietly slipped away. But in her heart, something broke. She knew that peace, so fragile, so precious, would never be the same again. Since the investigation, the Hale mansion hadn't felt the same. Everything looked unchanged. The breakfasts, the sunlight through the glass walls, the sound of Noah's laughter. But something between Ethan and Lena had shifted. They still spoke, still smiled. But the warmth beneath those smiles had thinned. Ethan grew quieter. He still played with his son, still thanked Lena at dinner. Yet sometimes, when she wasn't looking, his gaze drifted somewhere else, back to the CPS officer's words echoing in his head. Early dependency symptoms. Lena felt it too. Every time he walked out of a room, she glanced after him, not because she missed him, but because she was afraid. Afraid he might start to see her as a problem, afraid that one day he'd tell her it was time to go. One afternoon, while she was teaching Noah to recognize colors, Ethan entered, holding his phone. His tone was calm, almost detached. CPS will return in 3 weeks. They want to monitor Noah's progress. Lena froze, the red block trembling in her hand. 3 weeks? He nodded. And they might require you to take a basic childcare course. I'll handle the arrangements. His words were polite but distant. She forced a smile. Of course, I understand. That evening, passing his office, she heard voices through the half-closed door. You really think she's harmless, Ethan? Victoria's voice was sharp. She hasn't done anything wrong. She's unqualified, unknown. How do you know she's not using your sympathy to stay here? Silence. Lena held her breath, frozen. Then Ethan's voice came, quiet but firm. She's different, Victoria. She's not like the others. It was meant as defense, but it hurt anyway. Different still meant apart. Days passed, and distance grew. Ethan worked later, burying himself in meetings. Lena carried on as before, but each time she heard his car pull in at night, her chest tightened. She dreaded looking into his eyes, afraid of finding doubt where trust used to be. One night, Noah wouldn't sleep. He clung to her, crying every time she tried to put him down. Ethan stepped out from his study, exhaustion etched on his face. Noah, enough, he said gently. You have to sleep. The boy whimpered, gripping Lena's shirt tighter. Ethan sighed, his tone slipping. Lena, you can't keep indulging him. He has to learn to be independent. The words hit harder than he intended. Lena stared at him. I just want him to stop crying. You're making him dependent, Ethan said, then immediately regretted it when he saw her expression. He softened. I didn't mean that. She smiled faintly, though her eyes were wet. You're right. Maybe I've just, gotten too close. He tried to reply, but she turned away. Noah finally drifted off, but neither of them slept that night. Ethan stayed up in his office, staring at Valentina's photos, her perfect smile frozen in time. He wondered if he was about to repeat another mistake, letting emotions blur the line between care and chaos. In her room, Lena sat by the window, the sky outside heavy with gray clouds. She thought of her grandmother's voice. Happiness for people like us is fragile, Lena. Never believe it will stay. A tear slipped down her hand. She knew it then. The crack had formed. Tiny, invisible, but real. And once it appeared, nothing would ever be quite the same again. The days that followed were heavy with silence. The crack between Ethan and Lena had deepened, invisible yet painfully present. They spoke less, each word careful, each glance cautious. Noah's laughter remained the only thing holding the house together, a fragile light in their quiet storm. One Saturday morning, as Lena walked Noah around the garden, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Meet me, Café L'Arte, 10 o'clock in the morning. A short talk, for everyone's good." The name below it chilled her. Victoria. She knew she shouldn't go, but she also knew avoiding it would only make things worse. After leaving Noah with Mrs. Collins, she took the subway into the city. Café L'Arte was elegant, sterile in its perfection. Victoria sat waiting, poised, a porcelain figure in white. On the table lay a thick envelope beside her untouched coffee. "Sit down," Victoria said smoothly. "Let's not pretend. You're a good person, Lena, and I believe you don't want to cause trouble for Ethan." "He's not your brother," Lena replied quietly. "In every way that matters, he is," Victoria said coolly. "And I know your type. You walked into his life when he was weakest. You made him believe you're different, but you're not. You have no degree, no background, no name. Do you really think this can last?" Lena clasped her hands together. "I never wanted anything but to care for Noah." "And you can keep doing that," Victoria said, sliding the envelope toward her. "Somewhere else. $60,000. Enough for you and your grandmother to live comfortably. I don't hate you, Lena. I just want to free him from his illusion." The envelope gleamed under the cafe light. Heavy, tempting. But Lena's gaze didn't move. "I don't want your money. I just want to do what's right." Victoria's eyes darkened. "You're making a mistake. People like you don't get to choose what's right." Lena rose, her voice calm but firm. "Maybe, but at least I'll be able to look Noah in the eyes without shame." Victoria's lips curved. "We'll see how long you last." 3 nights later, the storm came. There was no moon. Lena had just put Noah to bed when she heard a faint rustle outside the window. Footsteps on wet grass. Noah suddenly woke, crying out, eyes wide in fear. "Bad lady! Bad lady!" he screamed, pointing toward the garden. Lena's blood ran cold. She rushed to the window. Through the glass, she saw the fleeting shadow of a woman in a light-colored coat slipping through the trees. Her gut told her exactly who it was. Ethan burst in moments later. "What happened?" "Noah. He said someone was outside. I saw someone in the garden." He called security immediately. 10 minutes later, the camera footage appeared on the screen. Blurry but clear enough to see a tall figure, light coat, quick steps. Even from the grainy image, there was no mistaking the face. Victoria. No one spoke. Then Ethan's voice broke the silence, low and sharp. "Why the hell would she come here at midnight?" Lena swallowed hard. "I have to tell you something. I met her at a cafe. She offered me $60,000 to leave." Ethan's face went pale, as if the floor had disappeared beneath him. "You met her? And you didn't tell me?" "I was afraid you'd misunderstand. I refused her, Ethan, I swear." "But you still hid it," he said, his tone dropping to ice. "You hid it, Lena. After everything." She stepped forward, tears in her voice. "You think I took it?" "I don't know what to think anymore," he said, voice shaking. "I lost my wife because I trusted the wrong person. I won't lose control again." Lena stood still, her heart breaking not from anger, but from the fear and pain in his eyes. "Noah needs to sleep," she whispered. "We'll talk later." He didn't answer. He just nodded once and walked away. The door closed softly behind him. The sound of his footsteps faded down the hall. Lena sat by Noah's bed, tears falling silently onto the boy's hair. The little house that had once been their refuge now felt like a cage of glass, beautiful, fragile, and cracking fast. Outside, the wind picked up, shaking the branches against the windows, and in that trembling light, Lena realized the storm was no longer outside. It was inside them now, violent, unstoppable, and tearing everything apart. In the days that followed, the Hale mansion sank into a strange silence. Spring rain had stopped, but the air still felt heavy, dense with things unsaid. Ethan and Lena spoke only when necessary. Polite, measured, cold. Only Noah remained untouched, his laughter echoing faintly through the still halls. One night, as Ethan worked in his study, his phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number with a photo attached. Lena and him in the dim hallway. Noah between them. She was bending down to comfort the child. He was leaning in to help. But from the wrong angle under the soft light, it looked intimate. Too intimate. Below the photo was a short message. "Is this the woman you trust with your son?" For a moment, the world froze. He remembered that night clearly, Noah's nightmare, Lena's arms, his own hand steadying her. Nothing more. Yet the image told a different story, one far easier for people to believe. Before he could react, Victoria entered, poised, composed, her expression sharp. "Ethan," she said, placing a tablet on his desk. On the screen, an anonymous blog post blazed. Billionaire Ethan Hale's affair with his nanny? The same photo, the same insinuation. "What did you do, Victoria?" Ethan's voice trembled with anger. She raised a brow. "Me? I'm protecting my nephew. Did you even bother to check who she is? I had her background looked into. Her grandmother, Teresa Morales, was arrested years ago for selling illegal medication. Is that the kind of influence you want around Noah?" Ethan stared at her, pale, voice shaking. "You've gone too far." "No, Ethan," she said coldly. "You have. You're blinded by guilt. That woman doesn't belong in this world. And deep down, you know it." He didn't answer. He only looked at the photo again, and something broke inside him. A mix of fury, confusion, and the old terror of losing everything. By the next morning, the story had spread. Reporters called. Lawyers arrived. One of them spoke bluntly. "Ethan, if this continues, Child Services might reopen the case. They'll question Noah's environment. The safest move is to let Miss Morales go, at least temporarily." Ethan said nothing for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, hollow. "I understand." That afternoon, Lena was outside cleaning Noah's toys when Ethan approached. His eyes were weary, distant. "Lena, we need to talk." She turned, smiling faintly. "I know, something's happened, hasn't it?" He hesitated, then placed an envelope on the table. "Your salary and compensation. I think it's best you take some time away until this all settles." Her face went still. "You're sending me away?" He couldn't look at her. "It's not permanent. Just temporary?" She interrupted, her voice breaking. "Temporary always means forever, Ethan." From behind them came Noah's voice, small and frightened. "Mama, where are you going?" He ran to her, clutching her legs. "Don't go, Mama." Lena knelt, holding him tight. Her tears soaked into his hair. "I have to, sweetheart. Just for a while. Be good for Daddy, okay?" "No!" Noah screamed, sobbing. "Mama, don't go!" Ethan stood frozen. His son's cries tore through him. Every fiber of his being wanted to stop her, to fight for her, to tell her he believed her. But the words never came. Between them stood the invisible wall, law, fear, and a world that punished tenderness. Lena turned and walked toward the gate. Her steps echoed across the courtyard. When she reached the end, she turned back. The mansion stood glowing in the dusk, and in the tall window above, Ethan stood watching. He didn't move, didn't speak, only stared as a single tear slid down his face, glinting in the fading light. Outside, Lena disappeared down the tree-lined road, and the Hale mansion, once again, fell silent. When the gates of the Hale mansion closed behind Lena, the early spring wind carried the last of the maple leaves down the stone path. She dragged her old suitcase toward the bus stop. No one called her name. No one came after her. Only the wheels of her case rolled softly against the wet ground. The apartment in Queens hadn't changed. Small, dim, and tired. Grandma Teresa lay on the narrow bed, frailer than before, but still sharp-eyed. When she saw Lena, she asked quietly, "You're back again, aren't you?" Lena smiled weakly. "Yes, just working nearby." The old woman didn't ask more. Perhaps she didn't need to. Days blurred together. Lena took night shifts at a diner, washing dishes, mopping floors, counting tips. The exhaustion helped her forget, except when a child cried somewhere in the street. Then the sound hit her like a knife, and Noah's voice echoed in her head. "Mama, don't go." Meanwhile, the Hale mansion dimmed. Ethan hired 5 new nannies in 2 weeks. All qualified, all patient. None lasted. Noah screamed, threw toys, refused food, clung to the teddy bear Lena had left behind. Every night, the house filled with his sobs and Ethan's weary footsteps. One evening, Ethan sat by his son's crib. The boy finally slept, cheeks streaked with tears. Ethan whispered, voice trembling, "You're not dependent, Noah. You're just missing someone who loved you. Just like me." From the hallway, Victoria watched through the cracked door. The scene pierced her. Since Lena's departure, Ethan had become hollow. Noah had become a ghost of the happy child he'd been. That night, for the first time in years, Victoria entered Valentina's old room. It remained untouched, the white dress on the chair, the photo of 2 sisters smiling at the beach. She sat down, tracing the frame with shaking fingers. "Do you hate me, Val?" she whispered. "If it weren't for me, you'd still be alive." A tear fell onto the photo. Memories came flooding back. The argument, the slammed door, the keys she'd thrown in anger, Valentina's car disappearing into the storm. The phone call hours later. For years, Victoria had lived in guilt, pretending control was redemption. She thought protecting Noah, controlling Ethan, keeping everything proper would fix the past. But now she saw she'd destroyed the only thing her sister ever wanted. Love. The next morning, headlines exploded. Victoria Cortez holds emergency press conference. On live television, she appeared pale but resolute. "There's a truth I've hidden for a year," she said, voice shaking. "My sister, Valentina Cortez Hale, died the night we fought. I threw her car keys in anger. The crash happened minutes later. I've carried that guilt ever since. In trying to protect her son, I wronged 2 innocent people. I owe them my apology. I retract every complaint against Ethan Hale and Miss Lena Morales. This is my fault, no one else's." The world listened in stunned silence. In the mansion, Ethan stood before the television, motionless. When the broadcast ended, he lowered his head, tears falling silently. Not of anger, of release. He didn't hesitate. He grabbed his keys, his coat. "Not again," he whispered. "I won't lose her again." As the door slammed behind him, Noah's sleepy voice called, "Daddy, where are you going?" Ethan turned back, his smile trembling. "To bring your mother home." The black car sped through the drizzle toward Queens, cutting through the gray streets like a heartbeat refusing to stop. This time, Ethan Hale wouldn't let silence steal what love had finally taught him to fight for. The rain hadn't stopped when the black car pulled up in front of the old building in Queens. Streetlights flickered, reflecting on the wet pavement. Ethan stepped out, his shoes splashing in puddles. He looked up at the faded number 23A on the door, the place she had returned to when he let her go. He knocked. No answer. The wind moaned through the hallway. He knocked again, harder. The door opened slightly, revealing Grandma Teresa, frail but sharp-eyed. "Mr. Hale," she said quietly, "I don't believe you have a reason to be here." "I came to see Lena," he said. "She doesn't want to see you." "I understand," he whispered. "But please, let me say a few words. If she tells me to leave after that, I will." She crossed her arms, studying him under the dim porch light. His hair wet, his coat soaked, his eyes hollow with exhaustion. Something in his face made her hesitate. "You made her cry until she had nothing left," she said. "She thought you trusted her. Then you chose to believe everyone else. Do you have any idea what that does to a woman?" Ethan lifted his head, voice trembling but steady. "I know. And I'm not here to justify it. I'm here because I was wrong. I let fear of losing my son, make me hurt the woman I love. I thought silence would keep us safe, but silence destroyed everything." He stepped forward, then knelt at the doorway, rain soaking through his clothes. "Please, Mrs. Teresa Morales," he said softly. "Let me see her, because I love her, and because my son needs her." For a long moment, the only sound was rain. Then Teresa exhaled, opened the door, and said, "She's in the living room, but if she tells you to go, you go, understand?" "Yes." Ethan entered. The apartment was dim, smelling faintly of tea and medicine. Lena sat by the window, holding a photo of Noah. When she heard footsteps, she turned. Her eyes widened, a storm of surprise and pain. "What are you doing here?" she asked quietly. "To say I was wrong," Ethan replied. He took a hesitant step forward. "I'm not here to defend myself. I'm here to apologize." She gave a bitter laugh. "Sorry doesn't change the fact that you believed them instead of me." He nodded. "I know, and I've paid for it every day since you left. Noah won't eat. He won't sleep. Neither do I. The house. It died when you walked out." Silence filled the room. The rain outside fell harder, drumming against the glass. "I'm not meant for your world, Ethan," she whispered. "I'm just a poor girl from Queens." He shook his head. "That world doesn't exist anymore. The only thing that does is you, and the boy who keeps calling your name in his sleep." He reached into his coat pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. Inside, a silver ring gleamed under the dim light. He knelt, not as the powerful businessman, but as a man stripped bare of pride. "Lena Morales," he said softly, voice shaking. "Don't come back as my nanny. Come back as my wife." Lena froze. The world seemed to stop. She stared at him, his messy hair, his soaked clothes, his trembling hand, his clear, open eyes. No defenses left, no walls, only love and remorse. She stepped closer, tears falling freely. "Are you sure, Ethan? I can't give you fame or fortune. I only have love." He smiled through tears. "That's all I've ever needed." From the doorway, Grandma Teresa watched silently. Her stern face softened into a smile. "Then don't make her cry again," she said gently. Ethan slipped the ring onto Lena's finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for her all along. Lena sobbed and threw her arms around him. Outside, the rain kept falling, but now it sounded softer, almost like music. And miles away, in the Hale mansion, Noah stirred in his sleep, clutching his teddy bear. A sleepy smile crossed his face as he murmured, "Daddy's bringing Mommy home." In that small apartment glowing with golden light, two people who had lost everything finally found what mattered. Not a second chance, but the life they were meant to live all along. The next morning, the sky was clear after a long night of rain. Sunlight spilled gently over the damp streets of Queens. Ethan held Lena's hand as they stepped out of the old building. Neither spoke, but their silence said everything. The storm was over. The car glided over the Brooklyn Bridge, the skyline fading behind them. As they turned onto the familiar road leading to the Hale mansion, Lena's fingers tightened around his. She didn't say a word, but Ethan felt her heart racing. When the iron gates opened, Lena saw the house, the same one she had left in tears. But this time, it looked different. Sunlight danced across the windows, the roses in the garden bloomed again, and then came a voice, clear and bright from the upstairs balcony. "Mommy's home! Mommy!" Noah. He bolted down the stairs, small legs stumbling, laughter bubbling like music. Lena dropped to her knees just as he threw himself into her arms. The world disappeared. There was only the sound of his heartbeat against hers. "I knew you'd come back, Mommy," he whispered between sobs. Lena laughed through tears, holding him tight. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. Mommy shouldn't have left." Behind them, Ethan stood still, watching the two people who had saved his life. For the first time, the mansion didn't feel like a house. It felt like home. In the corner, the two new nannies stood frozen. They exchanged a quiet look, smiled softly, and began packing their things. No one had to tell them. They understood. The child already had his real mother. Mrs. Collins stood at the top of the stairs, her eyes glistening. "Welcome back, Miss Lena," she said, voice trembling. "This house missed you." Lena smiled, taking her hand. "I missed it too." Noah still clung to her, refusing to let go. He turned toward his father, beaming. "Daddy, Mommy's back. We're a family now, right?" Ethan's voice broke into a smile. "Yes, son, we're a family now." Lena lifted her eyes to meet his. Between them lay 1,000 unspoken words, but none were needed. Ethan stepped closer, resting his hand on her shoulder. "Welcome home," he murmured. She smiled softly. "I never thought I'd hear you say that again." He shook his head. "I don't deserve it, but I'll spend the rest of my life proving I'll never lose you again." That afternoon, the mansion glowed with warmth. The kitchen buzzed with laughter. The smell of Rosa's pastries filled the air. Even Victoria, once the cause of all the pain, entered the dining room with quiet humility. "I'm sorry, Lena," she said sincerely. "If Valentina were here, she'd thank you for loving Noah as your own. And I thank you for giving my brother back his life." Lena looked at her gently. "We've all been hurt, Victoria, but now we can start healing." For the first time, Victoria smiled, not coldly, but truly. That evening, sunlight poured over the garden. Ethan carried Noah outside while Lena walked beside him. The air was sweet, filled with laughter and the scent of blooming roses. "Daddy, Mommy, look at me!" Noah shouted, running in circles, his laughter echoing through the yard. Ethan turned to Lena, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "I once thought I had everything, money, power, control, but I had nothing without you." She leaned against him, eyes soft. You'll never lose me again, Ethan. I'm home now. The sun dipped below the horizon, bathing the mansion in gold. Inside, laughter filled every corner. And for the first time in years, Ethan Hale knew what it meant to come home. Not to a house, but to love itself. A month later, the garden of the Hale mansion bloomed again, glowing under strings of golden lights. Roses framed the gate, candles flickered on the tables, and soft music filled the night air. It wasn't a grand wedding. No cameras, no crowds, just those who truly belonged. Ethan stood beside Lena, looking out through the glass doors. "Are you sure?" he asked quietly, still half afraid it was a dream. She smiled. "More sure than I've ever been." As dusk fell, guests began to gather. The house staff, old friends, Mrs. Collins and Grandma Teresa sat together, their faces lit with tears and joy. At the far side, Victoria Cortez arrived quietly in a pale blue dress. When Lena saw her, she nodded gently. Victoria walked forward and handed her an envelope. "I've set up a scholarship fund for Noah," she said softly. "He'll never have to worry about his future. It's the least I can do." Lena took her hand. "Thank you, Victoria. Valentina would smile tonight." A tear slid down Victoria's cheek. Maybe now she finally can. The piano began to play. Ethan walked out in a simple gray suit. Lena followed, holding white roses, the color of forgiveness and beginnings. Light shimmered across her hair, and the garden fell silent. Then, a small voice rang out. Noah ran down the aisle proudly carrying 2 rings, one real, one made of blue plastic. "I brought the rings, and one's mine," he shouted. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Ethan lifted his son, whispering, "You're the best ring bearer ever." "I know," the boy beamed. Standing together, the 3 of them looked like what they'd always been destined to be, a family. The old pastor smiled. "Love isn't something found," he said gently. "It's something built, brick by brick, day by day, with trust, forgiveness, and kindness." Ethan turned to Lena. "I thought I understood love," he said softly. "But you taught me it's not about perfection. It's about choosing each other, even when it's hard." Lena's voice trembled. "I thought I was just passing through your life. But now I know. It's not where we come from that matters. It's who we stay for." He took the silver ring from Noah and slipped it onto her finger. "From this day on, I promise you'll never walk alone again." She placed the gold band on his hand. "And I promise to always be your way home." The pastor smiled. "Before God, the stars, and these witnesses, I now pronounce you bound by love." Applause filled the garden. Noah jumped up, shouting, "Daddy, Mommy, kiss!" Laughter erupted as Ethan leaned in, kissing Lena gently. It wasn't a kiss of passion. It was peace, finally found. Night fell. Stars shimmered above as laughter and music drifted through the garden. Rosa brought out a small wedding cake, topped with 3 tiny figures, a man, a woman, and a boy holding a teddy bear. Victoria watched quietly, tears glinting in her eyes. Grandma Teresa clapped along to the music. "She's finally happy," she whispered. Noah ran around showing off his blue plastic ring. "Look, I got married too, to my teddy!" Everyone laughed, their joy spilling into the night. Ethan took Lena's hand, looking up at the stars. "Do you hear that?" he asked. "Hear what?" She smiled. "Peace," he said softly. Lena leaned her head on his shoulder. "Yes," she whispered, "and I know. It's here to stay." Under the starlit sky, surrounded by forgiveness and laughter, they stood not as perfect people, but as two souls who had finally found where they truly belonged. Home, in each other. 3 years had passed since the wedding under the stars. The Hale mansion had never been so peaceful. Each morning, Ethan woke to the sound of Noah's laughter, the smell of coffee, and Lena's gentle voice calling him to breakfast. The once cold house now breathed warmth and light. Lena sat on the back porch, her hands resting on her belly, where new life quietly grew. Noah ran up holding a crayon drawing. "Mom, look! It's the baby! Is it a boy or a girl?" She laughed softly. "We don't know yet, but I'm sure you'll be the best big brother ever." He whooped with joy, running around the garden like sunshine in motion. Ethan stepped out, coffee in hand, his eyes full of contentment. "How are you feeling?" "Better than ever," she replied, leaning on his shoulder. He kissed her hand, smiling, a simple gesture that said everything. Happiness, he'd learned, wasn't in success or wealth, but in these quiet, ordinary mornings. In his study, Valentina's photo still hung on the wall, but now Ethan could look at it and smile, not with grief, but gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered, "for letting me love again, for sending them to me." That autumn, the family visited Victoria in Vermont. The hills were painted gold and red. They found her sitting on a wooden porch, reading. Her hair was shorter, her face calm, her eyes soft with peace. Lena embraced her. "You look wonderful." Victoria smiled. "For the first time in years, I sleep well. I've stopped trying to control everything. Maybe that's what healing really means." Noah climbed up beside her. "Aunt Victoria, Mommy says I'm going to have a baby brother or sister. I'm going to teach them to build towers, but only when they're big enough." Victoria chuckled, her eyes shining. "Then I'll give the baby a gift." She pulled out a tiny silver bracelet, engraved with the words, "For the light that heals us all." Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. "Thank you, Victoria. You helped us learn forgiveness." She shook her head gently. "No, Ethan. You and Lena taught me love. I spent half my life living in guilt, but now I know. Light always finds you if you dare to open your heart." That evening, they all dined together on the porch. The autumn breeze rustled the leaves, and the sky burned orange with sunset. Lena felt a small flutter inside her belly, the baby's first movement. Ethan met her eyes, smiling as if to say, "We made it." Noah chattered excitedly about school, stopping every few minutes to whisper to the baby, "Be good, okay?" Laughter echoed, warm and bright. Later that night, when the house was quiet, Ethan stepped into the garden. Stars scattered across the sky, just like on their wedding night. He looked up, breathing deeply, his heart finally still. The fear, the pain, the ghosts of the past, all gone. In their place, peace. Lena joined him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "Thinking again?" she teased. He smiled. "Just wondering how a man who once lost everything could end up with all of this." "Because you deserve it," she whispered. "And because we chose each other." He kissed her forehead. Upstairs, Noah stirred in his sleep, smiling. In the soft moonlight, Valentina's photo gleamed faintly, as if she too was smiling, watching over them. The wind carried the scent of roses through the garden. Lena rested her head on his shoulder and said softly, "Family isn't where we're born. It's where we choose to love." Ethan tightened his arms around her, eyes lifted toward the endless stars. For the first time, he knew with absolute certainty they were home. Spring returned again, bright and gentle. The Hale garden was in full bloom. roses climbing every wall, sunlight spilling over the grass, and Noah's laughter echoing through the yard. On a wooden bench beneath the blossoms, Lena sat cradling a newborn baby girl, Ella, sleeping peacefully in her arms. The morning light shimmered over the child's hair like spun gold. Noah came running with his toy airplane. "Mom, she sleeps all the time. When will she play with me?" Lena smiled, placing a finger to her lips. "Shh. She's dreaming her first dream." He peered curiously at his sister's tiny hand. "Her fingers are so small." "They'll grow," Lena said. "And when they do, you'll teach her everything, won't you?" "I promise," he said solemnly. From the porch, Ethan watched them, a book in one hand, coffee in the other. The sight of his wife, his son, and their newborn daughter felt like a scene painted just for him. He walked over, placed a hand on Lena's shoulder, and asked softly, "Tired?" "Just peaceful," she answered, leaning against him. He smiled, kissing her forehead. "You gave us this peace, Lena." Inside, Grandma Teresa sat reading the morning paper, stronger and sharper than she had been in years. After Ella was born, Ethan had insisted she move in. She had resisted at first, until Noah took her hand and said, "Please, Grandma, come home with us." From that moment, she never looked back. Afternoons became story time. Teresa told fairy tales while Lena knitted beside her, and baby Ella cooed softly in her crib. The house that once echoed with silence now pulsed with laughter and warmth. Sometimes Ethan stood on the balcony, watching them from afar. He still ran Hale Empire, but work no longer ruled him. He left meetings early just to be home by dinner. To him, every giggle, every shared glance, every quiet evening was wealth beyond measure. One evening, as the family gathered on the porch, Noah placed his teddy bear on the table and declared, "His name's Sky, so baby Ella will always have the sky to protect her." Laughter followed, bright and full. Teresa raised her teacup, eyes glistening. "To what we lost, and to what we found again." Lena added softly, "And to love, not found, but chosen." The spring breeze carried the scent of roses through the garden. Lena lifted her eyes to the sky, where the first stars were beginning to appear. Everything felt calm, clear, and alive. Ethan took her hand, voice low. "I used to think happiness was something you earned, but you showed me it's something you protect every day." She leaned against him, whispering, "And something we choose, Ethan. Every morning, we choose to love, to stay, to believe." He smiled, eyes tender as he gazed at his family. "It's not perfect," he said softly, "but it's the most perfect thing I've ever had." From inside, faint music drifted through the open windows. Light spilled onto the garden, glimmering over the roses swaying gently in the wind. There was no tragedy left, no fear, only hearts that had learned to love and forgive. In that garden, the house that once symbolized loneliness now breathed with life. Noah slept with a smile, Ella stirred softly, and Ethan and Lena, two souls who had once lost each other, sat side by side, holding hands, looking toward tomorrow. Because at last, they had learned the simplest truth of all. Love isn't given. It's chosen every single day.